right. Hey, welcome to another episode of Murphy's Law. I'm Eric Murphy, and it has been a while since I have had Jenna Belk on. Jenna, welcome back!
Yay!
Yay! It is so good to see you, and just kind of a peek behind the scenes for people. I am obviously not in the studio space that I'm usually in. I'm in the process of building up my own studio space, and I need to get stuff behind me, but I'm trying to get lighting worked out and all of that. And poor Jenna has been sitting on the line for an hour and a half while I worked out tech issues. Jenna, first off, how can I make this up to you?
You don't need to make anything up to me. This is fun. This is educational for me. I'm mooching off of you.
Well, I sincerely appreciate it. You know, I love going over these with you. This is fun. So this one in particular actually came at your request. Mm-hmm. So you wanted to talk about this. So our first piece.
Let's go with Zach in New England. It says that you're not a churchgoer, but you have faith and you've had personal experiences with God. Do you want to go with personal experiences, or do you want to go with kind of your agnosticism and what you're going through?
All right. So first off, I love the way you jumped in and you just took it straight in. I know that it took me a long time, and I still don't always do it for Talk Heathen, is I'll just, oh, hey, how's it going? And then we get through like pleasantries first before we ever get to the meat of it. And you were just like, no, you've got a thing you want to talk about. Let's talk about that thing. And I got to give it to you. It was a 3 hosted episode. I can't do 3 hosts.
That was hard.
Yeah.
Trying to let everybody talk and not hog.
Mm-hmm. Especially because, yeah, I mean, it's not just 3, it's 4 people talking, and it's the dialogue is incredibly difficult. So cheers to you, watching you kind of take hold, give people the opportunity to talk, but continue the conversation has been fantastic. So in as much as we're going to talk about the subject matter, I am going to totally point out those points when you went in and just rocked it as a host. So he wanted to talk about a personal experience.
We get a lot of those.
Yeah, we do. And, you know, so just for people who didn't grow up, you know, in a religious environment, this is called your testimony. Mm-hmm. And it is, you're encouraged as a believer to tell stories that are very emotionally meaningful for you, times when you think that you saw a miracle, or times that you just anything that you could think of, you know, you hold on to positive supernatural experiences and attribute them to God. Does that sound about right?
Yep. Anything that you don't understand that just felt magical, I guess.
Absolutely. And then the pinnacle of that testimony piece is, what turned you into a Christian? How did you find Christ? Well, I want to share that with you. And yeah, people do. They bring it to us a lot. And I get it, you know, at church, you want to hear everybody's testimony, no problem. But testimonies don't really help a lot for our kind of show, right?
Right.
Mostly because there are kind of rules around talking about testimonies that are set up in church. You don't question somebody's testimony. It's not up for debate. You just nod your head and go, oh, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. And you kind of go on from there.
Yeah.
What's good is you really didn't, you kept the line and you kept a conversation going. And that was really, really good. So let's first dive into his claim here.
You know, I believed I saw a sign from God.
I believed I saw a sign from God. And do you remember exactly what his testimony was?
Yeah, it was something about he had to move, and there were just a whole bunch of things going wrong in his life. And then they moved, and something about he was really worried about his mom, and then his mom found a man and married him, and then it was like kind of like a happily ever after, walking to the sunset kind of thing.
Yeah. So the specifics as I remember them is, he was a kid. They had moved to a different town, and he said, Mom, I want to go back to our original town. And they moved back, and the mom wound up marrying their landlord. And he considered from what he was saying, so people might be going, well, why is that special? He's saying that it's special because he's attributing that that feeling of I want to go back, to this place as getting direction from God.
Right.
And
where am I supposed to go?
Exactly. And it's pointing to the consequences of that choice, which was his mom found this happy relationship to support that.
And so that's like a confirmation that, yes, this is where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that's how I would have taken it too.
Absolutely. But you never actually question, well, is your mom capable of, finding a relationship elsewhere, or would she have died, alone and miserable if they had been in a different city, or maybe if she hadn't have done that, but any other good thing would happen. You see, when you're looking back after the fact and you're trying to support that kind of, you can point to anything
and say, oh, that worked out.
Exactly. Well, it must have been the case because look at this good thing. That's
and
why.
I'm here.
Exactly. Yeah. And I actually, Dawn, I believe, had a really, really killer response here.
That really changed the course of all of our lives.
So your mother ended up marrying the landlord? Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. So your mom married the landlord. Is that the miracle?
Yeah, he went through this whole story, and then Dawn was just like, so this is what happened?
And his response just...
No, well, when you say it like that, it's like, huh, wow.
Mwah. Well, when you put it like that, it's entirely unremarkable, isn't it?
You got me.
The thing is that the caller was actually pretty honest about never having thought about it that way.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Isn't that where you would think to start is kind of not magically, but this is kind of what gets pointed out when you walk around with that magical mindset, you get there. And so from there, a lot of times that's kind of where the call would end. But you were hosting, you were in the driver's seat, and you were going to continue the conversation. And here's a little bit more of you.
Are you saying that because your mother married the landlord, that's what convinced you that there's a God, and that's what solidified your faith?
Beautiful.
I'm like, okay, this is what you just told us.
Mm-hmm. Is that what solidified your faith? Is this, the God? So again, you're not supposed to question a testimony. You're just supposed to go, oh yeah, absolutely.
Right. He's not used to people asking questions like this, probably.
No. And so he winds up saying, well, no, not really. To which your response was just, boom.
What's your reasoning for believing in God? If that's not it, we don't need to talk about that.
Just clear, concise. I like it. You cut through the bullshit.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so I know I'm kind of rapid firing through these, and I know the process is a little bit slower. I don't have all the tools anymore for transitioning. So thank you all for your patience. Give me time and I'll wind up, getting all of that stuff. But it's just going to be a bit. But let me hop into the next clip so we could talk about it.
But why do you attribute that to any gods at all? Why don't you just say, hey, that was a really cool thing that happened and it was monumental for me?
Yeah.
Yeah. That is something that we're told we're not supposed to think like that. We're supposed to attach any kind of symbolism to God.
Absolutely.
Something nice. Oh, God. Something pretty. Oh, God.
Yep. Well, and what's more, oh no, I lost my train of thought. Like entirely. Hold on a second. I got to rewatch this or I'm not going to.
What's your reasoning for believing in God? If that's not it, we don't need to. Why do you attribute that to any gods at all? Why don't you just say, hey, that was a really cool thing that happened and it was monumental for me?
Okay, yeah. So what's more is it's so not okay. And this isn't just in religion, but it really does feel like this in our culture. It's not okay to not know. It's not okay
Right.
to say, I don't know.
Right. Because if you don't have the answers, then you're seen as ignorant or stupid or weak or
Mhm.
fill in the blank with some kind of negative term.
Well, and you should be ashamed.
Hmm.
And I've actually debated someone who outright said, actually, it was a little more informal, but he said, if you don't know, then I win.
That's exactly how I felt.
Yeah.
If you can't prove me wrong, I'm right.
Yeah. It's this kind of black and white narrative that it has to be either one or the other. If you can't perfectly sum it up, then I'm justified in all of my claims without needing to back any of it up. In fact, I remember that being a point of contention in my church, that stories to kind of discredit people usually were centered around this person was wrong, they were embarrassed, everybody made fun of them, they're not to be listened to because they obviously can't reliably give you any true statements.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not how people work. It's just not. You know, people get...
Yeah, you're right. The whole good, evil, black, white, right, wrong, that doesn't leave a whole lot of room for human error, does it?
No, it doesn't. And if you make an error, then you get categorized as wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And you go from there.
And so if you make too many errors, then you're wrong. So you can't be wrong too many times. So you have to convince the world that you're right all the time.
Exactly.
For fear of appearing wrong.
And just for people who are watching, it might seem like we're kind of just saying this over and over and over again. But the reason we are is because when Jenna asks that question to a lot of people who didn't grow up this way, it may seem like a no-brainer, but it's not. The question that you asked in this call, that question alone is something that will probably stick with that caller. Give that person time to reflect and go, well, why doesn't that happen? And if they don't, maybe people who are watching will. They'll challenge that and go, how come I just say I don't know? And it can be such a heavy stumbling block for so many people to move past. And so he started to kind of wiggle around. Well, maybe God does this. Well, maybe God is a little bit more like that. And
right.
Again, you jump in.
Wait, are you saying that because you possibly could be wrong, then we're just going to change the definition of God?
I didn't say that at all. I'm just saying, I'm just trying to share some experience with you.
So,
and then they backtrack and say, well, I'm just telling a story.
Yeah. Well, I'm just giving my testimony. And ultimately that's it. And that is part of the reason why we cut people off when they start to evangelize and just go, I want to give you my testimony. Because that's not the etiquette around testimonies. The etiquette is you listen and you nod your head and you go, okay, thank you for sharing. And then that's it.
We've spent a lot of time on that show over the years, not me specifically, but the hosts have spent a lot of time listening to specific testimonies. And no matter how different they are, they end up the same, and then God.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're trying to figure out is, okay, let's skip to the end. How do you get from your story to God?
But that is such a hard ask, isn't it?
It really is. Well, it just seems so obvious to you when you're told that over and over and over and over and over again your entire life.
Yeah.
It's obvious. It's just like the sky is blue. That's just how it is. And then somebody's like, well, how? And you're like, huh.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? It kind of reminds me of talking about a place that you've never been to, right? So I can tell you all about Disneyland. Right. And I can say all these things about Disneyland. And if you say, I want to see this place with my own eyes. Well, I can draw you a map, but drawing you a map is not the same as taking you there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? These kinds of explanations that work their way around things, they're not actually bringing you solid evidence that you can investigate. Instead, it's talking around the issue. And
how do we tell the difference between the map of Disneyland and a map of Hogwarts?
it just depends on the claim. I mean, ultimately, for the purposes of that analogy, it's just a place. But I get what you're saying. If somebody brings up a god who has, X characteristic, how do you know that just because you proved that they that they live forever?
The idea of it, yeah.
Yeah, that they're not the Christian god, that they're not some other deity.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get to yours specifically? I get that. But therein is the rub. Is we need to be able to investigate some of these things, just talking about it, how it had a spot in my life. In fact, there was a clip that I had looked at that I had kind of skipped over for this episode. I was going through the archives. Jenna, over the last few weeks, I have watched so many hours of the Atheist Experience. Season 2, season 3, season 5, 6, 7, 8.
Okay.
Like just the old stuff. And a couple of them I actually want to go over with you if you're up for it.
Yeah.
It's really, really interesting. Just kind of a lot of the different takes. There are some amazing people that the ACA has had as hosts in the past that are just really awesome people. Some of them I've actually gotten to meet. Others probably won't get to. But regardless, I know that we're running a little long, actually. But how about next time we get together, I have this fixed. I've got the lighting. I'll have this ready so you don't have to wait for an hour and a half. And we'll talk about one of the old episodes next. Does that sound good?
That sounds awesome.
Good. Jenna, I missed you.
I missed you.
I'm so glad that you're back. I really, I love it. When this airs, you will have been on the Atheist Experience on Sunday.
Yeah.
So, as of the time of filming, I look forward to seeing it. And I'm sure I can say this and it'll still be just as true. I'm sure you did a great job.
Oh, thank you. And you're always awesome on Talk Heathen. I recommend you to everybody.
Oh, yay. So before we go, how can people find you?
I have a YouTube channel now, and that is at www.youtube.com/Jenna Belk. And I have a show going on right now called Atheistasis under that channel, where I'm trying to promote a balanced atheist perspective. And I am also, as we're seeing here, on the Atheist Experience, usually once or twice, once a month or so. And that's on YouTube at 4:30 p.m. Central on Sundays.
Perfect. So I'm going to put links to all of the different ways to support you, including your Patreon. Jenna has a Patreon. What's your Patreon?
www.patreon.com/Jenna Belk.
Perfect. I'm going to have all those links in the description, as well as a link to the video that we were looking at the clips of today. Jenna, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you. All right, everybody, you know the drill. Click here to subscribe. Click here if you want to watch more episodes of Murphy's Law. Click here if you want to check out Conversations with Christian Apologists. I'll see you next week.